good.
In the case of someone like Chikatilo, the brilliance and the strength of the person was in this iron discipline of keeping the two halves of his personality utterly separate.
For over 2 years, Chikatilo managed to keep his murderous rage under control. But finally, the dark side of his personality resurfaced. On September 3rd, 1981, while passing a library in Rostov-on-Don, Chikatilo spotted 17-year-old Larissa Chichenko. She agreed to take a walk with him along the Don River. Instead, he steered her into the woods. Again, Chikatilo was unable to perform sexually, but he remembered what had satisfied him 2 years earlier in the secret house on Mezhevoy Lane.
He would attempt to have sex, normal sex with the woman. He would inevitably fail. That would release the great rage that lived and lurked inside of Chikatilo.
Sex was the vehicle, but the basic need was to feel a sense of power over his victims.
Chikatilo killed with even more brutality than before. He stabbed his victim repeatedly, then savagely bit her.
He was really getting even. He was angry with humanity, but especially with women. He was seeking revenge, and he was getting revenge against the people who rejected him the most.
With this second murder, the veneer of Chikatilo's normal life shattered. A pathology spawned by years of frustration took over. Chikatilo became a serial killer.
He was a man who was impotent. What does the word impotent mean? It means literally without power. So in every case, whether he was dealing with the young boys, the young girls, or the young women, it was essential for Chikatilo to establish physical dominance and control over the victim.
Gratification has been mixed up with anger and hostility, and one complements the other to the degree that you can't even separate them. He became intensely excited and even would spontaneously ejaculate during that mutilation that had taken place.
Then he cut off pieces of his victims' bodies.
Chikatilo admitted making the incisions, admitted removing the uterus, but would never quite cop to the fact that he ate the uterus. He said, "I liked to nibble on it. They were so pink and springy." Those were the words he used.
What had started as a quest for sexual satisfaction had now become a murder spree, the worst in Russian history. (1984), Rostov-on-Don, Russia. Andrei Chikatilo had now murdered 23 people. Faced with these brutal killings, police began to question anyone who looked suspicious. On September 13th, 2 Rostov detectives spotted a 6-foot-tall man wearing a black fur cap.
He was trying to make conversation with a young girl. It was decided not to detain him on the spot, but follow up and see what he was going to do.
The officers tailed the suspect as he approached one young woman after another. Eventually, they observed him fondling a prostitute in a deserted station. This act of public lewdness was enough for detectives to arrest the man. He identified himself as Andrei Chikatilo. He was carrying a small leather case.
He had a briefcase, and in the briefcase was Vaseline, ropes, and knives. Well, that sounds to me like what we refer to as a kill kit.
But after questioning Chikatilo, investigators discovered that he was a devoted family man and a loyal Communist Party member. He was eventually released.
They were looking for a young killer who had a criminal record, who might have been known as a sexual pervert in his community.
He had gray hair, thick glasses. He was tall and skinny with a little pouch of a belly. He seemed to be just another face in the crowd of people that you would see in a provincial Soviet city.
In addition, police laboratories mishandled a blood test that could have tied Chikatilo to the crimes.
Well, the Russian police were, first of all, technologically in the Stone Age, and in terms of organization were on that level as well. So typically blood and sperm samples would get lost.
That in itself was an example of the failures of Soviet science and of Soviet production capabilities.
Chikatilo was free to kill again. Police were desperate to stop the attacks, so they decided to try an American criminological technique, psychological profiling. Psychiatrist Alexander Buchanovsky was recruited to create a psychological portrait of the killer.
Preparing the criminal's profile took several months of hard work. I had access to top secret materials that have never been published.
By analyzing this evidence, Buchanovsky painted an intriguing description of the killer.
Buchanovsky said that the criminal was unsociable, that he was very ill. He stressed sexual perversions. He said the criminal could either be living on his own or with a wife, but he didn't have a sexual relationship with her.
Yet it would take police another 6 years to capture Chikatilo.
A lot of the factors that caused the demise of the Soviet Union were also at work in the Chikatilo case and enabled him to kill as long as he did and as many people as he did without being caught.
Finally, on November 20th, 1990, after a 12-year killing spree and 52 victims, Andrei Chikatilo was arrested. Dr. Buchanovsky's profile would prove chillingly accurate.
In his confessions, he says he enjoyed their cries, he enjoyed the blood, and he enjoyed their pain. Well, he's obviously a sexual sadist.
What the serial murderer learns with the act of his first murder is that he can be in control. Because until this time, they've basically been the scattered pieces of an individual that has never made them feel that they are in charge.
The most serious motivating force for a lot of people, if not all people, is sex. The desire to procreate, the desire to be a sexual being. And in his case, it was just a totally frustrated, humiliating failure that he struggled with all of his life.
Spring 1992. Andrei Chikatilo, 56-year-old grandfather and loyal party member, stood accused of a string of gruesome and brutal murders. The Soviet Union had collapsed, becoming the Commonwealth of Independent States. Chikatilo's trial promised to be the first great spectacle of the post-Soviet era. The Russian people reacted with grim fascination.
Once Chikatilo's case became more or less public knowledge, the local people were hideously aware that a serial killer was in their midst, and nothing spreads faster in Russia than rumor.
And soon, Chikatilo would be given a nickname befitting his murderous deeds,